Over in Europe, Huawei's biggest overseas market, Germany, just launched its 5G spectrum auction this week, with Chancellor Angela Merkel saying that she doesn't believe in excluding a company simply because it's from a certain country. The UK has also indicated it plans to integrate Huawei equipment with added security checks. The US, though, still maintaining that Huawei poses a national security risk. We're now joined by Cyxtera Chief Information Security Officer Leo Taddeo. Leo, it's great to have you on this morning.
Morning.
Let's start first with what's happening over in Europe, because that seems to be sort of this battleground between the U.S. and China and the back and forth between whether Huawei's integrated into their 5G infrastructure. Why has the U.S. been having so many challenges convincing the Europeans to get on board?
Well, I think the first thing to consider is the importance of secure infrastructure. So that's why this is important. Once it's in place, it's really hard to limit its threat, the vulnerabilities there. You can't just swap it out. So I think the stakes are very high. In terms of influencing our partners, these are very close intelligence sharing relationships that we have, and our ability to be confident in their ability to maintain confidentiality of the information we share with them is at stake. So the U.S. interest in preserving the confidentiality and the integrity of the information that's shared between these companies and these countries is really what we're striving for. Now, Germany is an important partner for us, and I would leave it to the intelligence communities to work this out, which they usually do. It unfortunately is transcending into larger economic issues.
Right.
But I don't think that the relationships are at stake. The personal and long-term relationships between the U.S. and Germany and other allies in Europe will survive and will thrive after the Huawei issue is resolved, no doubt.
Leo, in your expert opinion, I mean, how much evidence is there really that companies like Huawei and ZTE pose the kind of level of risk that the Trump administration is clearly trying to convince other countries that it does pose?
Well, I think there's a lot of evidence that China has a track record of using cyber attacks to advance their military, diplomatic, and economic goals. There's a number of cases that have been indicted recently. We recently saw the heads of CIA, NSA, and FBI issue a warning, and I think we have to look back at those warnings and take them seriously. There's some information that they can share and some that they can't, but what we need to know and need to focus on is that you can't prove something is secure. When these systems are in place, they're very complex and they can be modified through application updates and other changes. And once the vulnerability is in place, it limits options on our visibility, our ability to remedy a vulnerability in later instances. And so the threat persists. And we're not in crisis now, but in the event of a crisis, you're talking about all the systems that ride on the backbone. 5G is going to change the way the economy is run, from self-driving cars to the way we deliver medical services. And you want to have confidence that the traffic that's routed through these components is trustworthy.
So the threat is serious, and I can imagine that Germany doesn't want China spying on them through 5G networks. But is the reason why these countries are resisting the U.S.'s warning because they don't want the U.S. to take the lead and be left behind? Is that part of it, the 5G competition between nations?
Well, certainly we want to compete in the 5G area. I'm not sure that we are necessarily going to replace Huawei with American suppliers of the same equipment.
Well, that's part of the issue, right? There are no American suppliers that are competing on the same level.
Yeah. Right. That's why they're kind of ignoring the threat at this point.
There are trusted partners that we rely on because they're long-term relationships with companies like Ericsson and Nokia, which those components are in our systems today. And so having them build out our 5G network adds a level of confidence because we already have trusted relationships, not just with on the commercial level, but also on the government and intelligence sharing level.
Yeah, and we've heard the U.S., at least Mike Pompeo, say that he would have to reconsider intelligence sharing if some of these countries use Huawei equipment. So a story that we're going to continue to follow as well. Leo, it's great to have you on today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for
Appreciate it.
joining us.
Thank you.